Okay, I have just turned my mic on, so hopefully that you guys can hear me this time. So Morris and Kim, can you guys hear me now? Perfect. Okay, so what I was trying to say there, obviously, was welcome along, and what I'm going to be talking about today is the Chocolatey community repository moderation process. So it might seem like a little bit of a weird topic, but it was specifically requested by Morris, who's here in the chat room today. So what I'm going to talk about is the kind of end-to-end process for what happens when someone pushes a package to chocolatey.org. So let's get started. Now, community package moderation, in my mind, is one of the best things about chocolatey.org, but it's also, unfortunately, one of the worst things about chocolatey.org. And I'll go into a little bit as to what that means and why I say that. From a moderator point of view, it's bad because it involves a little bit more work for us. So the moderation process is really about securing and giving a sense of security for people using Chocolatey that the packages that are on the community repository are safe. And that is essentially what it's all about. So it means that there is a little bit of work for moderators to ensure that that's the case. But from an end user perspective, it's great because there is that sense of security that comes with it. Now, when I say the moderation queue on chocolatey.org, what I'm actually referring to, and this is completely public knowledge, we're not trying to hide anything. If I go up to here and click packages, and then in this drop-down list here, if I click on moderator queue, we can see what that moderator queue is in its current state. So in its current state today, there are 596 packages in moderation. Now that seems like quite a high number, but I'll get into why that number is quite so high. If we scroll down through this moderator queue, we'll see in dark green there are some packages here. In a slightly lighter green, there are another set of packages. And then if we go down into the next page, then we'll see packages that are currently in kind of an orange state. Now we'll get to each of those again. But where we'll start is, let's imagine a situation where we've just pushed a package to chocolatey.org. Now, what will happen is that your package will come into this moderator queue, and it's a first in, last out process. So it will go to the end of the queue. So right now, your package would go to the end of what is the 38 submitted. There are 38 submitted packages, and your package would go to the end of that queue, right? So the first thing that will happen when that package gets submitted to chocolatey.org is it will hit one of our automated processes. There are several automated processes on chocolatey.org, and these try to alleviate some of the heavy lifting that the moderators have to do. So the first one, and again, it's completely public, is this thing that we call the package validator. So if you go up to the GitHub repository for Chocolatey, you'll find one for package validator. Now, to all intents and purposes, what this thing is a Windows service. And that Windows service is going to sit and it's going to query chocolatey.org for packages that are in a current state. And that state is one that's just been pushed. So what package validator is essentially a rules engine. So if we drill down into the code here, if I go into source, and then I go into validator, and I go into infrastructure app, and then rules, then there are a set of rules. And those rules fall into 4 different categories. There are notes, there are requirements, there are suggestions, and then there are guidelines. So what the package validator is doing is it's going to look at the contents of the package that's been pushed to chocolatey.org, and it's going to look at the PowerShell scripts that are contained within it, and it's going to try and assert whether those packaging scripts conform to the guidelines, requirements, and suggestions that we've added into the package validator. So if we take, for example, a requirement in here where we have the project URL requirement. So what this rule is doing is essentially looking at the new spec file that is contained within that package, and it's asserting that the package project URLs, the string, is not null. And if it is null, it's going to throw an error. And it's going to throw an error along the lines of the new spec file, the project URL in the new spec is required. Please add it to the new spec, right? Now, what will happen at that point is that the package that has been pushed to chocolatey.org will go into a state that is known as waiting for moderator. Waiting for maintainer, sorry, not the moderator. So if I scroll down here and I look at one of those orange ones, then these are packages that for some reason or another have been pushed back to the original maintainer who created that package, and it's going to ask them to make a modification. So let's try and find one that has actually failed with one of these reds. So if we click on one of these, for example, maybe not, let's try and find a good one. If we go back to this one as an example, then what we'll find in here, hopefully, is not one that's been pushed back by a reviewer. That one's been pushed back by a reviewer. So when it fails a validation rule, it will be pushed back to the maintainer, and that maintainer will have to make modifications to that package so that it conforms to all the rules, right? Now, that process is a continual process. So if they make a modification, they might add that missing project URL as an example. They can push a new package. They don't have to change the version number. So normally, in the context of a package repository, the version number is immutable, meaning that when you push a package version, you can't push another one. And that's why you'll see people updating the version numbers. There's one right here, actually. This one here is using what we refer to as the package fix notation. So someone has made a modification to the package because the underlying application version number didn't change, but they wanted to change the packaging. So they've incremented the fourth part of the version number with the package fix notation. But during the moderation process, the package isn't quite yet immutable. So what that means is you can make a change to the contents of that package and push the same package version again without having to change anything else. So then it goes back into the queue. So it will then get tested again by the validator. And if the validator is happy, then it will mark the package as having passed the validator. So if we look at one of these packages that's sitting in the queue just now, for example, this ping plotter, then we'll see that here we've got a notification that says ping plotter has passed automated validation. So it went through the package validator and everything's good. So we've updated the information about this package in the database and we're now happy, right? So all packages that are pushed to chocolatey.org will go through this validation check. You can't get around it, right? So if you do get, as a maintainer of a package, if you get an automated email back from the package validator that says you're not conforming to these requirements, then there will be information in that email that says this is what you need to change, and then you make those changes, you repack the package and push it into back up to chocolatey.org. And it will go back into that moderation process one more time. Okay, so that was package validator. If you're interested in looking at the rules, they're all here. It's all documented. And if there are additional rules that you want to suggest, then feel free to open a pull request and we can certainly look at them and take them. So the second part of the automated process is what we call a package verifier. So package verifier, again, it's all open source, it's all on GitHub, is a system that will actually attempt to install the package and also attempt to uninstall the package to make sure that it works properly. Because if it doesn't, then there's no point in it getting approved. There's no point in it going into the chocolatey.org because it's not going to work, right? So when we first started the moderation process, that was actually a manual effort on the part of the moderators. We would actually test the installations manually and then provide feedback to the end user or the maintainer to say that something was wrong or something needed corrected. So that was very, very arduous on the backs of the moderators. So it's something that we then automated, and the basis of that automation is actually over here on this Chocolatey repository, the Chocolatey test environment. So this Chocolatey test environment is a vagrant file. It defines an image that was used for the purposes of performing that automated installation and that automated uninstallation. So if we jump over here to PowerShell, I can do vagrant. So I'm going to do the equivalent of what is done on the packaged verifier locally, just to show you what gets done. So if I do a vagrant up here, I'm going to bring up that base image that has got nothing else on it apart from Chocolatey. And then we can use that base image to perform an installation test and then see whether it actually installed correctly. Now, in the Chocolatey test environment that we actually have for package verifier, it's exactly the same as this base image. So if you were to test a package locally, and obviously we recommend that package maintainers check the packages locally on their own machine before pushing to chocolatey.org, and we would prefer that you use this image for doing that, right? Now, there are some quote-unquote problems with this image. The first one that most people run into is that the base image is a very, very scaled back installation of Windows Server 2012 with little to no Windows updates applied to it. And that's done for a very specific reason. And that reason is that we want to ensure that any kind of unknown dependencies for an application that's being installed are found out at the point of installation. So by installing on a machine that has little to no Windows updates, you very quickly figure out that this application has a dependency on, say, this Windows update or this Visual C++ redistributable. So if you were to just install a package onto a freshly created Windows 10 machine that's got all the latest updates applied, and you just did a Chocolatey package that installs something, then you might not identify that this package, this application, has this additional requirement. Now, that's great, but it also has the side effect of requiring that if one of those requirements, one of those dependencies needs to reboot the machine, then we haven't quite got that part of the automation fully figured out yet. So if we find out that as part of the installation of a package, it needs a dependency that requires a reboot, then we actually have to exempt that package from the package verifier because we haven't quite got that full automation process in place to allow a yes or a no in order to know whether it actually installed correctly. So I'll come on to that in a bit, but for now what I want to show you is the actual local test environment up and running. So what I did in the background there is I did a vagrant up. It took the base image, which is Windows Server 2012. It went through and installed some stuff onto this machine, and that stuff really was Chocolatey. So now if I open up PowerShell and I run Choco, then the latest version of Chocolatey is now installed on this base VM. If I then go and do a command here, which is vagrant sandbox on, what that's going to do is it's essentially going to take a snapshot of this VM so that I can test the installation of something and then very quickly roll back to the exact same place that it was before to do an install of another machine, an install of another application. So if I just do chocolist local only here, I'll see that the only thing I've got installed is Chocolatey. Now, if I go back to our moderation queue that we had over here, let's just pick, we'll pick a different one this time. And since Maurice is in the chat room, we'll use his package, which is Movie Collector. So I already know that this package has succeeded the package verifier because it's got a nice green bulb here. If I click on this, then we can drill down here that this package completed automated validation and it completed automated testing. So I know that that package succeeded in all the tests. But let's say, for example, a maintainer came back and said, well, this works perfectly on my machine. It's not passing the verifier. So what I would do normally is I would go and install that on my local copy of the test environment in order to have a sanity check and make sure that things are working the way that the maintainer expects them to. So if I'm just going to go ahead and install this one. So this is called Movie Collector. So if I go over here and I do Choco install Movie Collector and let that run, then what we should see is that it installs correctly and we've got no issues, right? So let's just let that run through. So in the chat room, Kim's making a very good point. The Vagrant Sandbox plugin that I'm using is not something that comes for free with Vagrant. It's an additional plugin that you have to install. And that is, if I do Vagrant, I'm on the wrong machine. Oh, it's not going to work there, is it? If I do Vagrant here, plugin list, we'll see that I have got the Sahara plugin installed, which is the one that provides the sandbox functionality. And then I've got another one which is for Vagrant Reload. So that's as simple as Vagrant plugin install Sahara, I want to say. So if we jump back to, so here, the Chocolatey succeeded in doing that. And if I do Chocolist local only, we'll see that we've now got two packages installed, which is exactly what we expected and exactly what we want. And just to show that completing, if I do Vagrant Sandbox rollback and jump over to this VM quickly, then it will put that machine away, and then it'll bring it back to the point that we're exactly at the point where we said Vagrant Sandbox on. And now I've got Chocolist local only again with just Chocolatey installed. So now I could run off and test another package if I really wanted to. It's just a very, very quick way of testing out packages. So what I've shown here in terms of bringing up a VM, snapshotting it, installing a package, reverting to another snapshot, and then installing again or uninstalling is the exact same process that the package verifier is going to run through. And again, if for any reason that process fails, that package will again be pushed back to the original package maintainer with information about what went wrong. And that information really comes from this bulb up here. So if we click on that, right-click on that and say open a new tab, what I'm going to see here is the output of the log that happened during that process I've just described. So the package verifier has captured the entire installation log and the entire uninstallation log. So if there was something failed, then you have all the information that you hopefully need in order to figure out what went wrong, so that you can make a modification to the package and then resubmit it for the purposes of the package moderation process. So all the information is there in the installation logs, but it sometimes helps to have the testing environment up and running on your local machine so that you can actually visualize what's happening. Because 9 times out of 10, when a package fails the package verifier, it's because something popped up on the user interface. It popped up a screen that needed some user input. Now, what will happen on the package verifier that's running in the background is there's not a human there, obviously. So that will just essentially, eventually that will time out. So if your installation does pop up any sort of UI, it is going to fail the package verifier. And it's not always crystal clear in the logs when that happened. The ideal situation would be to take the local testing environment, do the installation test yourself, and then see what happened, and then again figure out how to fix it. Okay, so those are the two main automated processes that happen that will directly impact on the moderation process for a package that's submitted to chocolatey.org. Right? Now, there is a third automated process that we refer to as the package scanner. Right? So I can't show you the source code for that one, because that one we keep in a private repository. Now, the reason for that is simply it's a little bit more involved, and there are some, let's just call them secrets, for want of a better word, that we want to keep in terms of how that process is working, because it's much more sensitive information. So what Package Scanner does is anytime, again, it's a Windows service, Package Scanner, when a package is submitted to chocolatey.org, it will take that nupkeg, the new package, it will download it, and it will install it onto the same testing environment, a different instance of the testing environment, but another instance of the testing environment. And they'll check to see what files are dropped onto the file system. And then it'll take each of those files and it will submit it to VirusTotal. So if we search for VirusTotal here, so VirusTotal is an online scanning web service that will take any package, any file that you submit to it, and it'll run it through up to 70 different virus scanners to test for any malicious activity going on those EXEs, those DLLs, those nupkegs, whatever file is submitted to it. So every package that's pushed to chocolatey.org will be inspected, blown apart. It'll find all the EXEs that are put onto the file system as a result of that installation, and it will submit all of those to VirusTotal for scanning. So if we look again at this movie collector package, which is currently sitting in the ready for review state, we scroll down, we can see again that it's past the automated validation and it's past the automated testing. So you might wonder, well, why is it still sitting ready for review? So the answer to that question is, as of right now, there are no virus scan results for this package. So, and the reason for that, unfortunately, is because you'll see that this package was submitted on the 14th of December, which was 3 days ago, and the validation happened on the same day, the verification happened on the same day, but it's sitting waiting for virus scan results. So unfortunately, over the weekend, the server that we use to do the virus scanning, let's just say it had some issues. So when I looked at the package moderation queue this morning, I found that Package Scanner wasn't doing what it's meant to do, and I've since fixed that, but now we're essentially sitting waiting for Package Scanner to catch up. So obviously over the course of the weekend there's been quite a few new packages and new package versions submitted to chocolatey.org, so it's walking through that process of scanning all of those and playing catch up. So unfortunately for Maurice, although this package is perfectly valid, it's past validation, it's past the verifier, I, as a moderator, can't approve that package yet because I haven't seen that the virus scan results are in play. So if we go back to another package that that may have virus scan results, so if we go back to the package moderation queue and we look at this ping plotter, the one that I was looking at earlier, it's also passed validation and it's also passed automated testing, and the virus scan results have been submitted. So it's taken the EXE that was downloaded and it's taken the nupkeg and it's submitted those to VirusTotal, and we can actually click on those, I believe, and go through to the actual submission into VirusTotal, and we can see that was the SHA of the file. these are the virus scanners that were used on that file, and only one of the 69 of those virus scanners identified that there was an issue with that submission. So in terms of Chocolatey, what we deem is kind of acceptable is anything greater than 4 virus scanners detecting a problem is what we regard as problematic, right? Because what I would say that this is, in the case of this exe, I would say that this unsafe is probably a red herring. There's actually no issue with this exe. It's just that for whatever reason, the algorithms that this Silence has identified that there's something unsafe within that exe. So given that it's only 1 out of 69, I would be perfectly happy to approve that package, right? And again, anything over 4 would cause me to push back on the package maintainer to try to figure out what's going on with a high number of virus detections. Now, there are some applications on chocolatey.org that have virus detections greater than 4. Now, the reason for that is that there are some applications that are known to trip up lots and lots of virus scanners because they see them as being malicious. So the things that I'm thinking of there are things like Bitcoin mining applications. There's a few more of those than you might think on chocolatey.org, but almost all of those, because of the way that Bitcoin mining works, actually triggers lots and lots of virus detections. So typically what we look for in those kind of package submissions is some sort of reference material that can go into the package description that kind of puts us in touch, or puts people in touch with the actual creators of that application. So there might be a known wiki article or a document that says, we know that this package causes problems with, or this application causes problems with virus detections. It's something we're working with the virus people on to kind of stop these false positives. That's the kind of things that we look for in those kind of package submissions. But obviously, at the end of the day, it is your choice. And if we were to go over to here and look at Choco config, then it's actually one of the configurations that you can set to prevent Chocolatey to actually stop installing an application if the number of virus detections was greater than an allowed number. Now, by default, that is set to 4, and I can't find the configuration value that I was looking for now, but it is in there. There is a setting that you can set that specifies how many virus detections you want to actually stop on before it's deemed as safe, right? But then that's something. Is it really, Kim? I didn't. Or so in the chat room, I'm not sure if Kim's referring to the same thing or not, but you can. I didn't think that was a licensed edition only, but it could well be. I will come back with that. So Kim's saying yes. I'm going to trust Kim on that one. So potentially in the licensed version of Chocolatey, you can configure the number of the virus detections that you want to have before a package will be allowed to be installed or not. Okay. So moving on. So that was package verifier, package validator, and then package scanner. So those are all the automated processes that kick in. There is a fourth one that's currently not working, and that's why. Look at him. Okay, okay. So the virus check, perform virus checking on downloaded files. Oh no, that's not the one I'm referring to, Kim. That's so a virus check will actually. So you can perform a virus check at the point of installation, and you can actually hook that up to your own virus scanner if you really wanted to. What I was referring to was kind of a toggle flag that says if the known number of virus detections for a package was greater than a certain number, it will actually stop the installation. I'm fairly sure that that's in there, but I'll need to go and verify that. So the fourth automated process that I wanted to talk about is the one that's called the package cleanup, right? So this one currently isn't running, and that is why in the moderator queue, we currently have 551 packages waiting for a maintainer. So at the point in time that a package is pushed back to a maintainer, what we want to have happen is another automated process running that says if a package has been sent back to a package maintainer and nothing's happened to it within a 15-day schedule, then we'll send them kind of a friendly email reminder saying, look, there was a package that has been sent back to you and nothing's happened to it within 15 days. Are you in a process? Are you in a position where you could correct the package and resubmit it for the automated process to be re-enabled again? Then again, if we don't hear from the package maintainer within another 15 days, so 30 days in total, we would actually automatically remove that what is essentially a broken package into a rejected state. So it will no longer be sitting waiting for the package maintainer. It will be sent to a rejected state. So that's really just to clean up, to tidy up the chocolatey.org and only have the packages submitted that are, or packages available that are known to be working. So just looking at the chat, Maurice has found the one that I was looking for. So that's licensed editions only. So it is licensed editions only, and the default virus check minimum is 4. So anything greater than 4 would cause Chocolatey to say, I'm not going to install this package straight away. You need to tell me definitely that you're happy that that gets installed. So that is a license edition only feature. Thank you for that. So yeah, package cleanup. Like I say, after a 15-day period, it'll send an email to say, can you help fix this package? And after 30 days, that package cleanup script would move that package into a rejected state. And at that point, once it's in rejected, a package maintainer could no longer push that same package version to chocolatey.org. So in those situations, what we ask the maintainers to do is to reach out, and the moderators on chocolatey.org could move the package from a rejected state back into a submitted state, ready for them to push a new package version that will hopefully fix the issues that caused it to be moved into the rejected one. Now, the reason that the package cleanup script, which again is just a Windows service, isn't running today, is because the machines where we have these services running, we kind of had to flip from one service provider to another, and during that process, we haven't quite re-enabled the package cleanup script again. So that's why that one isn't running. Okay. So we've talked about the Chocolatey test environment, so we can close that one as well, and we can come back to that one. So the only other automated process that is running on packages that are pushed to chocolatey.org, but it doesn't provide any input to the actual package moderation process, but I want to talk about it anyway, is the package cacher. So one of the features that we have on the licensed editions of Chocolatey is the concept of our CDN cache. So when you create a Chocolatey package, ultimately, normally, there is a URL contained within that package that tells Chocolatey, go out to the internet, grab the exe of the MSI from this location, and pull it down and install it. Now, unfortunately, some vendors like to change their websites from time to time, and as a result, those URLs that were perfectly working would stop working, right? Now, the package cacher actually looks at a package that's been submitted, and it finds all of those URLs of those EXEs, those MSIs, those zip files, downloads them, and then adds them to Chocolatey's CDN. So when a licensed version of Chocolatey comes along, it'll actually say in the output log, it'll say not downloading from the original location, but downloading from Chocolatey CDN cache instead. Now, the benefit there, obviously, is that if those URLs do change, anyone that's using the licensed version of Chocolatey will get the benefit of that package still working. Now, the reason I bring that up is because the package verifier actually works in another mode of operation. There's a package verifier that runs on also existing packages. So everything I've spoken about to date is package verifier running on newly submitted packages that haven't been tested yet. But package verifier will also run on historical packages, and I think the schedule when it's running is for it to run monthly. So it will test already available packages to ensure that they continue to work. Because obviously a package that works one day, a month from now, might not work anymore for a multitude of reasons. So what chocolatey.org provides is a continual testing system that will then inform the maintainer of any problems with submitted packages that worked and that were approved, but then at some point in the future stopped working. So even in those situations, the package maintainer will be notified, but if you're on a licensed version of Chocolatey, that package will probably continue to work for you. So that's why, obviously, on the testing environment that you can run locally, and also the testing environment that's running as part of the package verifier, we are not using the licensed edition of Chocolatey. We're just using the open source version so that we can test out all of those edge cases. Okay, so hopefully all of that is making sense so far. Is there one? There was a question in the chat room which just popped up. Is there one or more validator instances running? There's only one validator instance. The act of validation is really, really quick, because really all we're doing there is downloading the nutkeg, the new package, blowing it apart, looking at the contents, the package scripts, and then running a series of rules on it. So it's literally, once that package is downloaded, it's literally seconds for the validator to do its work. So no, there's only one instance of the validator running, but there are multiple instances of the verifier running, and they're doing different actions. Okay, so one is we can have up to 2 instances of package verifier running to attack the queue if there's lots of packages in there, and we've got a second instance of verifier that is running on historical packages. Okay. So, in terms of the automation process for the Chocolatey community repository, that's it. So, there's package validator, there's package verifier, there's package scanner. So, if a newly created package or a newly submitted package makes it through all of those with successful, what happens is they end up in this queue, which is the light green of the options that I'm showing there. So each of these packages have passed validator, passed verifier, and they're sitting waiting to confirm that the virus scanner has succeeded successfully. The ones that are in dark here are ones where the maintainer has actually come back with a question, or rather, what I should say is that the maintainer or a moderator might have put a comment into the package moderation page, and then the maintainer has come back with another response, and then there's maybe a backward and forward to see how that's going. So a good example would be this one. So this Synology drive. If we look at this one, then on the 11th of December, it was submitted, and then for whatever reason, the maintainer almost immediately pushed the package again. So that's kind of proof that the immutability of a package isn't enforced until the package is indeed approved. So this maintainer submitted a package and then submitted another one. And then straight away, it failed the automated validation. So it failed because of a requirement. The new spec file contains templated values which should be removed. So if you wanted more information on that, you can click on that and it'll take you through to a wiki article that provides additional information, hopefully, about what that error actually means. And then there are some guidelines that this maintainer might want to look at doing. These aren't enforced, guidelines aren't enforced, but they may become enforced at some point in the future. So if you do submit a package and you'd get some guidelines, I would recommend that you kind of look to implement those guidelines, even though they're not a requirement. Suggestions are, in a similar vein, probably in your best interest to look at those and to add them to your packages, but these aren't as likely to be moved to requirements as guidelines are. So these are further down. Notes are really intended for the moderators. So a note is something on the package that maybe stands out that needs to be checked. So in this instance, the package maintainer field matches the software author. So there's sometimes we get packages who are submitted by the people who actually write the underlying application. And in those circumstances, it's perfectly fine for the owner's field to match the author's field. But most likely, a Chocolatey package is submitted by someone who isn't the creator of the application itself. So this is a note to the moderators to kind of just sense check that, to make sure that those things are the same, because the package is from the original application creator. So that's something we'll look at. A question there: is it valid to add notes to tell people who want to repackage it or modify it with instructions? Is it valid to add notes to new specs to tell people? I'm not sure I follow the question, Turbo Shekel Master. If you want to elaborate, we can come back to that. I'll continue with this for a little bit. So at this point, this package would have been returned to the maintainer with essentially the contents of this, and hopefully they were in a position to correct them. So then later they submit a new package. Again, it failed validation, and another email would have went back to them to say, please fix this. And then after another couple of submissions, this package it then passed validation. So it's passed validation. It's still got some guidelines, some suggestions, and some notes, but it's passed the validator. Then we get to the point of running package verifier. And what we found here is that it passed automated testing. So again, this package then came into the moderator queue ready for a human, in this case, me, to look at that package submission to see whether this package is valid. So I then took a look at it and I found out that there was a license.txt that wasn't needed. So what I mean by that is if I scroll down here to the files section, then in this files section, there was both a Chocolatey install.ps1 file and a license.txt file. Now, the rules and regulations within the package submission process states that if you are creating what's known as an embedded package, so an embedded package is one that actually contains the exe or the MSI or the zip file that make up that application. In those situations, because we're redistributing the exes and the binaries, we need to have a license file contained within that nupkeg that says that the redistribution of those files is allowed. So we, in addition to that license.txt file, we also ask for a verification.txt file. And that verification.txt file is to allow moderators to say that the embedded file actually matches the website that it's meant to come from. So that's a manual process that we as moderators do. But when you're doing an embedded package, those are the two files that we look for. Now, what was happening in this package submission was that there was a templated license.txt file that was actually not being used because it's not actually required as part of this package. So I sent a note back to the maintainer that effectively said, please remove the license.txt file because it's not needed. So then they've come back with a newly submitted package and they've provided a note to say that they've done that. And then again, it goes through the validation and it goes through the verifier. And now this package is ready to be approved. Now, there are some additional checks that I, as a moderator, would then do. And if I go to github.com/chocolatey, no, that's not where I want to go. I want to go to chocolatey.org, and I look at my docs, and I look at, where is it? Moderation. Then there's actually a fairly comprehensive document here that says these are the things that we look for as a moderator, and it kind of steps through what we want to check for, what we want to push back on, the things that will trip up a package submission, the things that won't, and it kind of goes into those details. So I, as a moderator, have looked at these rules and I've kind of essentially memorized them, unfortunately. So when I'm looking at a package, especially ones that are new package submissions, i.e. they haven't gone through the moderation process before, I'll look at these things to see that everything is lined up. So in this example, I would want to check to make sure that these URLs are valid. So I'm clicking on this and I'm checking to see that the project URL matches up with what the actual package is intending to package. I'll be looking to see that the license URL actually links to a valid license. So in this case, it's going off to the end user license agreement for Synology. I would probably look to see that other things are included. So in this one, the maintainer of this package hasn't actually included any of those additional suggestions, which are the docs URL, the mailing list URL. So those are additional URLs that we kind of want in the new spec because it provides the end user with more information about where to find help about a package if something's wrong. So in the case of a brand new package submission, I, as a moderator, might push back and say, can you add those to the new spec? Now, it's not a requirement, so again, it's kind of at the behest of the moderator and how much they want to enforce that. So there might be a little bit of difference between one moderator and another. But for a new package submission, I probably want as much things to be right as possible. So I might push back and do that. From another point of view, I want to make sure that those virus counts are valid. So what you're seeing here, I'm not actually signed in to this one, but if I go over here where I am signed in, and I look at that moderator queue again, we will see a little bit more. So if we go back to this Synology drive, then we scroll down, then we'll see a slightly different view. So here's that new spec file blown up so I can see what's going on. Here's the Chocolatey install.ps1. At first glance, that Chocolatey install.ps1 looks quite well formatted. It's using package parameter splatting, which is how we like to see Chocolatey install working. It's got a checksum. That checksum is being used within the checksum here, and it's a SHA-256, so it's not an MD5 or a lower SHA. All of these things are kind of ticking boxes in terms of what I want to see in a package. The virus scanning results is showing me that there are no detected no detections on either of those files. The only thing that's really concerning me at the minute is this software authors and software maintainers. These are listed as both the same. So ABMI, I'm going to guess, doesn't work for Synology. So really what we would want to see is that this was changed to have Synology Inc. as the actual package author, or the application author, and leaving ABMI as the package maintainer. So I'm going to need to push back on this package submission to say that needs to be changed. And because I'm pushing back on something that has to change, I would definitely at this point add a note for him or her to add in those additional URLs into the new spec if at all possible. So this package, although it's valid, it installs correctly, it's passed the validator, there are some things in this package that I would need to push back on because it doesn't, at the current process, at the current state of play, it's not in a position to actually approve it. Okay, so I, as a moderator, have the option to add some notes into this, which will then go back to the package maintainer. I can specify that I want to change the package status. So if I was happy with this package, I could set that to be approved, and then I could hit save. At that point, it would go into chocolatey.org in its approved state, ready for anyone to install. So I'm not going to do that now because that would require me typing while trying to talk. So we're not going to do that just now. But that's hopefully showing you the process that needs to go through for packages that are submitted. So if we go back to the moderator queue, I want to show you a couple of other things. The first one is actually about this ping plotter one. So ping plotter has passed validation. It's passed the verifier. This package is one that's been submitted a few times, and each of those times they've been approved. I can look back by clicking on the show link to see if there were any known issues or kind of a backwards and forwards chat that needed to happen before that approved status was achieved. I can see that for the last 3, there haven't been much in the way of back and forth. It's always just got an immediate approved status. So that to me is a good indication. And looking at this one, there are no virus scan results. It's a well-formatted chocolatey install.ps1. It's ticking all the boxes again in terms of what we want to see in a package submission. The other thing that this package has got going for it is that it's submitted by this person called FLCDRG. Now, I happen to know that is the chocolatey.org username for David Gardner, who, in actual fact, is another Chocolatey moderator. So what you tend to find is that people who become moderators are actually people who maintain their own packages. Now, what I should point out is that if I were signed in here as David, and I came to this package as part of the moderation process, is that I wouldn't have all these options. So even though David is a moderator, he can't moderate his own packages. So it always has to be moderated by another person. So in this scenario, this package has got lots of things going for it. It's sitting in the moderation queue because it needs to be moderated at this point. But what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to change that slightly. So what I'm going to go here is I'm going to say, I want to trust this package ID, right? So a package that reaches the trusted status is one that has gone through a number of iterations for package versions. And in each of those package version iterations, there were no known problems with that package. Each time it's just worked and it continues to be maintained to a high standard. So by doing this, and then by setting this to be approved, what's going to happen, so I'm just going to go ahead and click this. So I've set it to approve, and I've set it to trusted. So what's going to happen now on the next package version that is submitted to chocolatey.org for this package from David is that the package will still go through the package validator, and it'll still go through the package verifier. But if both of those checks succeed, then it will automatically go to the approved state. It won't need the final moderator approval that says everything's good, right? Now, you will notice that currently the package scanner isn't included in that check, but it will be. That's something that we're adding to Chocolatey.org hopefully soon. So that will mean that both the package validator, the package verifier, and a good or under that threshold of 4 occurs for every package submission that happens for this package. But if all of those checks succeed, it will automatically go to the approved state. Okay, so moving to the approved state is not something that a moderator will choose to do lightly, and there is an additional assumption that the package maintainer will continue to keep that package at a known high level. If for whatever reason it was found that that was no longer the case, what we would do is we'd actually remove that trusted status, so that it wouldn't automatically be approved. It would have to come back through into the manual moderation phase for a human to take a look at it. Okay. Now, from time to time, packages do flip from one maintainer to another maintainer. So any package that was approved, was a trusted package before, if it moves to a new maintainer, that trusted status will be removed as well, because we need to build up trust in that maintainer before we can carry on. Okay. So with that in play, if I go back to the moderation queue again, we'll then see that ping plotter is no longer in the queue. It's gone. It's approved. It's ready to be trusted. It's ready to be installed. The other one that I wanted to talk about that's in the moderation queue is this one, MSI Gaming App. So again, it was submitted. It passed automated validation. It passed the failed automated testing. The maintainer then submitted the package again. It passed validation, but it failed the verifier. Failed automated testing. So if we look at this, this maintainer, Shanshiro, who's actually another well-known maintainer on Chocolatey.org. So he's kind of built up, or again, he or she has built up a level of trust. So what she's actually asking for is an exemption request. So if we were to go to the verifier, the local verifier, and we do a Choco install of a gaming app, I don't actually know how long this will take, but I'll kick it off and see if it's going to take too long. So gaming app, and then it is -- version 6.2.0.83. If I let that installation run, what Shanshiro is trying to tell me is that the installation on the package verifier is failing because one of the dependencies requires a reboot. So as we spoke about, any dependent package could cause verifier to go into a restart mode, which will mean that the actual installation will fail because it needs that reboot in order to succeed. So looking at the dependencies of this package, this is the Visual C++ redistributable for 2012. If I click on that and we drill down to the dependencies of this package, it doesn't have... well, I thought this one had some more dependencies, but maybe it doesn't. Some of them have a dependency chain that goes down, and there's some well-known ones. Interesting. That's not what I expected to see. But this is why we run the test on the local testing environment. So what this is telling me is that this gaming app, this MSI gaming app, has a requirement for a specific piece of hardware, or in my case, any hardware, because I'm running on a virtualized environment here. So this is saying this application did not support this motherboard. So what this is telling me is that this software, this underlying software, is not intended to run on this operating system or on this architecture of the PC that it's running on. So in this scenario, the installation is always going to fail. So the package verifier can't actually be used for this package. So what Shanshiro is asking for is a testing exemption in order for it to not be tested by the package verifier. So because I've tested this on my own testing environment, and I've seen that that's the problem, I'm actually happy to grant that. So if I go down here where I went to before for the show trusted section, there's this other one that is an exemption section that makes this package exempt from package verifier. So if I were to tick this box and then hit approve, then I would any new package version that's submitted would no longer be tested by package verifier. It would only go through validator and the human check if it's required. So in this scenario, Shanshiro said that it's installing dependencies is calling the reboot, but that's not actually the case. Because normally what I would do is I would just take this text and I would paste it down into here to then say that that's why I'm exempting it. But in this case, I'm not. So I'm going to write something along the lines of this application is not intended to be installed on a virtual machine, let's say, and as a result, fails installation test. So in that scenario, again, Shanshiro is a well-known maintainer. He's built up a level of trust. So with that in mind, I can review that to see whether all the other boxes are ticked. So again, it's got a software site, which is for the MSI. It's got the terms of usage. Is it a new package version? This is not a new package version. This one has been approved before. So again, I can look at the notes that go through it to see if there were any problems during the review process, which there doesn't seem to have been. There's probably one slight, if I was to say anything about this package, it doesn't use package splatting, or parameter splatting, which makes it slightly harder to review. So what I mean by that is, in order to make sure that all of these variables are being used, I kind of have to scroll off to the right here to see how everything's lined up. If they were using parameter splatting, it would be a lot easier to read, but that's not something that would cause me to fail to push back a package necessarily, but it's certainly something to think about. If we can make any packages that you submit as friendly to the moderators as possible, then that's probably the best way to expedite it through the process. So in this scenario, I am happy to exempt it, and I'm also happy to approve it based on ticking all those boxes. So I'm going to go ahead and say save. So at that point, this package again will fall out of the moderation queue. So if I go back to the moderation queue, then we're getting this number down, and there's one less to worry about. So the only other one that I wanted to talk about was this one, Vivaldi. And I'll come to the questions that are in the chat room in a second. So Vivaldi is an interesting one. It's submitted by a package maintainer, B3 Tech, Brandon, who he's maintained this package for a long time. And the problem with this package is that it fails the validator. So Vivaldi has failed the validation process, the package validator. And it's failed it on a specific rule which says, do not use environment variables for accessing Chocolatey installation arguments, use passed-in package parameters instead. Now, if we look at the Chocolatey install.ps1, then it's not actually tripping over that rule. The package validator rule that this one is tripping up on is actually invalid, right? So if I, or rather, I'm not going to say invalid, it's not complete. So if I go over to package validator, then I can look here and I can see that B3 Tech, Brandon, has actually raised an issue that says that the validation rule is invalid, right? And what we need to do, and we being someone in the Chocolate community or me or one of the other members of the team, has to go and fix the validator to stop this rule from affecting Brandon and possibly other people's packages. Now, in terms of what we can do for this package right now, there is no testing exemption from the verifier. Or sorry, let me say that again. There's no testing exemption possible for the validator. We've just seen in the previous package that I approved that I was able to exempt it from the package verifier, so it wouldn't go through that process again. But we don't have anything that will exempt it from the package validator. So again, that's something that we need to look at in terms of a change that could happen to chocolatey.org. So what we've had to do for the previous submissions of this package is to actually exempt them, so that we can effectively state that this package doesn't kind of work, but it's exempted because of a good reason, right? So what we need to do to fix this package ultimately is to fix validator so it doesn't trip the rule anymore. But for the time being, what Brandon is doing is anytime he submits a new package version for this particular package, is he is immediately adding a note, and that's why it jumped to the top of the moderation queue to state that we need it to be exempted. And that's what he's got here. Please approve, and then he's got a link to the actual issue that I showed you. So in this one, again, I'm happy to kind of pretty much immediately pass to set it to exempted, because I've gone through the process with this package a number of times, and I know Brandon as well. So again, I'm going to set this exempted, and I'm going to say save. So what I'm hoping to have shown here is that this is kind of end-to-end the moderator queue and how it works. So we've gone from a newly created package that goes through package validator and package verifier and package scanner, and then ultimately it meets the human interaction state. So a human will come along and it will do all the sense checks that are listed in the documentation for moderators. And what we like to show, or what we like to hope, is that all of this work in terms of the automated stuff and the human approval provides some security to the users of Chocolatey in the knowledge that the packages that they're installing are safe, right? Because ultimately, Chocolatey is a package manager for Windows that's installing applications onto your machine, and we want to make sure as much as we possibly can that those packages are safe to be installed on those machines. So what we try to do is we try to keep this moderation queue as low as possible. But what I will say is that all the package moderators are volunteers, right? They are doing it out of the goodness of their own hearts, because they are invested in Chocolatey, in the ecosystem, and they want to see it succeed. So I would ask that you be nice, for want of a better word, to those moderators. And if you do get pushback on any particular package, know that it's done with good intent, and that intent is to ensure that the package itself is up to a high standard and it works the way it's meant to work. Now, that goes for both myself and Paul. So myself and Paul are employees of Chocolatey now, but the time that we dedicate to the package moderation queue is still in our own time. We don't get paid to do that moderation work because it's not our core priority, but both Paul and I take time out of our own schedule to provide package moderation, to do the package moderation work. So what you'll find is that there's quite a few active moderators on the site. So you'll see different names coming across and coming through as part of the package moderation process. But we are always looking for new package moderators. So if you are interested in helping out, definitely reach out. I know of at least one person who may or may not be in this chat room who is interested in doing that, and I'll be reaching out to them in due course to do that work. So I will definitely go forward with that, because at the end of the day, we want as many package moderators doing the work as possible to keep this queue down. When we first enabled this moderation queue, there was actually like 5,000 packages sitting in the queue. which we eventually whittled down to where it is today. I personally am kind of not obsessed, that's the wrong word, but when I am looking at the queue, I like this to be sitting at 0 just because it makes me feel happy. So I've got a strange tendency towards that way. It's like inbox 0. I'm the same way with that as well. I like my inbox for my email to be 0, and I want the package moderation to be empty as well. So that's where we are today. So one of the questions that we had in the feed in the chat was, so in my example, I'm packaging VS Pro 2017 with a layout capability, but there's a consideration to make of that file system you're using and the free space it will need to instantiate the layout, which is 60 gigabytes in my case. It could be more. And that layout cannot be put on the network drive or some other network external drive. Some of these I cannot have checks for, so it will be better off to feed a message that could be included in the install script as a comment or in the new spec as a note directive. Okay, so I think I see what you're setting at. So in terms, this is Turbo Shekel Master. You're asking specifically for part of the moderation, the moderator, that you're asking if you could add a note for the moderators to have some sort of indication that the package may fail because of a hard disk requirement. Is that what we're getting at there? If so, if something like that, I would actually suggest you put that into the Chocolatey install.ps1 file itself as a comment. The reason that I would suggest that is because if we go to, it won't work because it's not featured, but at the point of time when you do a Choco install, if you don't pass in the Y flag and you don't have the feature enabled for confirming globally that you want things to be installed, you actually have the opportunity to look at the Choco install.ps1 file. So that's kind of your best opportunity to provide additional information to the user who's installing it, that additional hard drive space would be required. And if I go back to the moderator view, then when I'm looking at a moderation, I'm always looking at the Chocolatey install.ps1 file. So any comment in here that you can provide about what's required for this installation to be successful, that's your best place to put it, I'll be honest. So any comments like that, definitely feed it into here, or you could put it into the package moderation page as well as a comment. So as soon as you've submitted that package, you could come in here and add a review comment that says, this may or may not work because of this requirement. Yeah? Well, it's both for the moderator and for the person installing the package. I want to prompt with a read host or something for the layout location. Okay, right. So that's slightly different. So let's take that. So if we were to do a read host at the command line here, then it's going to sit and wait for input from the user, right? Now, that is going to be a blocking call. So if I were to, if I were to create a script that did a read host, then that read host would block, and it would block until the end of time, until the user actually does something, right? Now that, in terms of doing an automated package installation, that's bad, because it would then sit and wait, and it would time out. Any automated process that we put in behind that, it would sit there, and it would eventually die, right? Now, Chocolatey actually spawned its own PowerShell host. So the way that it does that is that any read host is not going to be a blocking call. It'll eventually time out in a much lesser time than it would normally. So if you were to put a read host into the install script, it would still allow automation to happen. But if you have a requirement on that value being something valid in order for the installation to continue, then that's something different, right? So Maurice in the chat room is pointing out at package parameters is probably where you want to go. So I'm going to bring something up here in the Chocolatey docs. So if I go up to here and I do a search for oh, that didn't work. That was the wrong keyboard shortcut. Control F. Package parameters. then what you'll see here in this example is kind of a fallback that happens. So what Maurice is talking about is using package parameters that could be passed into the choco install command that says this is where I want your location directory to be. Now what this example is showing is that if the package parameters that have been parsed don't include a license parameter, then you could fall back to using a read host. So that's kind of giving you the best of both worlds. So it gives you the ability to pass in a package parameter, but if you don't, package parameter isn't available, then it can fall back to using a read host at the command line, right? What I tend to do in these situations is I would go one step further, is I would have my choco install.ps1 file look for a package parameter first and foremost. I might have it check for an environment variable with a specific known name. And if neither of those things are available, then I would fall back to a read host. And then once I get down here to actually do something, if my local variable that I've set from one of those things has no value, at that point I would throw an error and it would actually fail the installation because I can't continue without that information being available. Not if you have a default, right? The reason why I want to have a passable parameter is not everyone will have 60 gigabytes or more on their system drive. Yes, exactly. So hopefully that will be exactly what you need. So the other thing you could check is at the end of the day, your chocolatey install.ps1 file, it's just PowerShell. You can do anything you want. So you could use PowerShell to look at the available space that's available, and then make an informed decision about whether that installation should continue or not. And that you could do based on querying with PowerShell. You could actually throw an exception that says, I'm not going to continue because you don't have the sufficient space available. So that's definitely something you could do as well. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I'd point out in this area, when we're talking about files that are that size, what's the other one I want to look at? You also have the option of mounting an ISO file. So if you did have that layout file, that layout for Visual Studio somewhere, and on a network share as an ISO, you can actually use, you can actually mount that ISO and install from the layout file that's mounted as part of that ISO. And there's two ways of doing that: either with the imdisk package that you could take as dependency, or if you're on a later version of Windows that has a higher version of PowerShell, then there is actually a command that you can use for mounting that ISO. So you wouldn't have to have all the files on the local file system. You could have them as part of the ISO that's on a network share or something. The other thing I'd point out to you, it's getting slightly off topic, but I wanted to say it while I remember about it, is if we do a search here for Visual Studio, that's not going to work, is it? That's the one I'm wanting. One of these ones. Yes. If we look at what Jacob has done for all of his Visual Studio packages, then he has got the ability to control pretty much everything about that layout file that you'd ever want to. And if I remember correctly, that's on his package source page. He goes into a lot of detail on this Visual Studio extension as to how he's created those layouts and how he makes use of them. So definitely take a look at Jacob's GitHub repository, because he has got a base extension that does a lot of the work that I think you're referring to. And you could actually take a dependency on his extension package to then use these commandlets that he's provided to then do everything that you need to do as part of your installation. So hopefully that helps. If not, definitely reach out and we can hopefully help you with that a little bit more. And no, Manfred, in chat, I haven't done that yet. No. So Manfred in the chat room has mentioned another thing that I should point out to you is that there is this repository on Chocolatey organization that is the Chocolatey package recipes. So this is a collection of harder to install packages, and they're put up here as an example of how you can do things. So this one was submitted, I think, by it was Rismoni that submitted this. So he has updated, or he's submitted into this repository how he installs Visual Studio Professional in his organization. So again, he walks through the entire process of how he's done it and how he goes through it. So if I drill down into here and look at the choco install.ps1, did I click on it? I don't think I did. Then it will step through. So he's using an ISO. So he's using an ISO. He's then mounting it, and then he's passing in the required arguments to do all the stuff that he needs to do. So that's definitely something to take a look at. The other one that's in here is from Rismoni again, which is how to install Office 365 and how to work through that process. One thing I should point out, in case you're not familiar with it, is that Rismoni is actually using AU, the automatic update script. So what he's doing here is he's actually got an internal process running that's actually looking at this URL to find out when a new version of Office 365 or Visual Studio 2017 is released, and then this AU script will automatically download and regenerate those nutkegs, those chocolate packages, ready for installation. So don't be confused about what that file's doing if you're not familiar with it. If you're not using AU yet, have a look. It's definitely something you might want to get involved with, but if you're not, ignore that one particular file and then just look at all the other files that he's got in those recipes. So that's definitely something to take a look at. So I think I got to all the questions, and I think I got through all of the moderator process that we're currently following. So I will go into a mode of kind of talking about future plans. So if there are any other questions, now would be the time to ask them, and I'll come back to them. But what I did want to point out is if we go back to this one, then what you'll find here is a GitHub repository on my personal GitHub, and this is where I am collecting issues for suggested topics, for anything to do with live, for anything that you think I, as a person, would be able to help with. So essentially, this stream that we've just done came from Maurice reaching out and saying that he would have liked a stream on package moderation and how it works. So if there's anything that you wanted me to talk about in terms of whether it's Chocolatey, whether it's Cake, which is the other open source project that I work on, or whether it's Windows automation or build systems in general, feel free to create an issue in this live streams repository, and I will hopefully get to that at some point. On this repository as well, I'm keeping a list of previous streams that I've done, so you can watch them back if you're interested. Ultimately, those videos will be hosted on my YouTube channel, which you should be able to see. My hand's going over there. There's a link to my YouTube, and that's where I'm going to be hosting all of the videos that come from these streams. On Twitch itself, I've just enabled the storing of streams on Twitch itself. So if we were to go to I'll probably not do that just now because that's going to cause some sort of inception. I should probably close that. It will be available on Twitch as well, but I think it's only for 14 days or so. So I am recording this locally, and it will go up to YouTube at some point. So that's all I had to say about that. Okay, so any questions? And then I will bring this to a close. So why is it not flagged by the validator? Why? Sorry, Maurice. Is that were we talking about something specific there, or why is what not flagged by the validator? The license text and the validator.text. I'm confused by the question. If you can elaborate on that, I'll definitely get to it. So Turbo Shekel Master, since I have my own hosted GitLab, will there be an issue linking to it once I'm happy with packages states? So again, can you elaborate on that? I don't see an immediate issue, assuming we're talking about the same thing. So for a package submitted to chocolatey.org, we kind of ask that within the new spec file, you link to the original package source. So what I mean by that is, if we go and find an example, if we go to one of Maurice's ones again, in here, then this package source link will link to the source files that Maurice has created for that package. So that, again, is a mechanism for end users to look at those files, to see what they're doing, and to be able to understand what's going on. If you've got your own GitLab instance, and that's where you're storing the package source files, I've got no problems with you linking to that in the new spec, as long as that GitLab instance is publicly accessible. So GitLab will be accepted. So as long as it's publicly accessible and I can browse the source on it as a moderator, I've got no. I would have no objections to that. Nope, not at all. So it's and needs a strong word there. The package doesn't need to have a repo listed, but it's definitely a preference because then, so if, for instance, this MongoDB portable package had a problem, I would be able to direct people to Maurice's repository here to then be able to create an issue that says something wrong with the package. So it's definitely a preference to have that, but it's not something that would prevent a given package being approved. So, like I say, as long as that GitLab instance is accessible, then I've got no objections to using GitLab over GitHub. Okay. Before we draw to a close, Maurice, did you want to expand on that? If you're still there, or maybe you're typing, I don't know. If not, I'm going to close it off because. Coming to the bottom of the hour. Oh, perfect. You're good. Okay, so hopefully this was useful to you. If it's not, if I'm just prattling on and it's of no use to anyone, do let me know, because I do want it to be useful to people. So feel free to reach out. You'll find my Twitter on the screen there. Feel free to reach out. I like to say that Twitter is a great communication mechanism because it's limited to 280 characters. So you're more likely to get a response from me on Twitter because it's limited to how much I can actually respond to you. So definitely reach out there if you have any questions. And yeah, definitely subscribe to YouTube and Twitch. It lets me know that people are interested. And my intention is that this stream is going to be a weekly stream going forward. Probably the next 2 weeks will probably be missed because one is Christmas Eve and the other is effectively New Year's Eve. So probably won't do streams there because I won't be allowed to. But back in January, I'll pick up one of the issues that is on here or any other issues that come through. I'll look through the ones that are open and go from there. One that I do have in mind to do is to actually start doing some coding. So I'm hoping to start looking at how you'd set up your development environment to build the Chocolatey source code, and then also to actually write some code for Chocolatey. So there's lots of ideas, lots of feature requests, there's lots of bugs. Maybe we shouldn't say that. There are some bugs in chocolatey.org. Or in Chocolatey rather, that need to be fixed. So I'm thinking about doing a stream around how to set up your environment to do that, and then also to provide back to Chocolatey. So that's an idea that I have. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do that, but it's certainly floating around up there. And there's some questions going on there. Where can I find the YouTube channel? Sorry for possibly a dumb question. It should literally be, where's my fingers? It should literally be there. youtube.com/Gary Ewan Park. And that should get you to where there's a playlist for streams that you can subscribe to as well. Okay, so that's all I've got. I will hopefully talk to you all another day. I hope you have a great Christmas and New Year. And with that, I will say goodbye. Thank you very much.